your ways. Already read all your plays, yeah. I think I'm booked for tomorrow, yeah. And today just ain't your day, hey. I see you feeding they hate. See the bodies that you take. We do not break, never no breaks. Building this place on top of your plate. Come and see me by the my squad too deep. Gotta give it like Newsweek. Kicking these fat like Bruce Lee, yeah. In front of never use like UV, yeah. UV, yeah. Sun gotta shine, Lord, UV. Hit him with the oil. Come out, share, don't let him fool you. He bring up your passport, bring up his few.
Welcome to Off the Clock, the show that talks one-on-one with all those involved in athletics, from coaches and players to team staff and the fans. Today's guest is head athletic trainer Brandon Myers. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So we're in the throes of a big season, but part of your job is to make sure that they stay healthy and on the court or on the field. And how important is preseason training and conditioning so they don't get hurt?
Well, preseason training and strength and conditioning is very important to our programs. It's important that the athletes are strong and in good shape whenever their season begins, so they don't have time to get conditioned while they're trying to practice. So the stuff they do leading up to their season is vitally important.
So what might be some of that stuff? You said maybe weight training. What else is involved?
Yeah, so they have we have a strength and conditioning staff that does a great job of getting athletes strong and conditioned, so that they help guys like me out a lot, because one of the best ways to prevent injury, or that we can try to prevent injury anyway, is to make sure that we're strong. We know that if we are strong, we can overcome a lot of different tweaks or sort of able to get over some ankle, some sprains and strains maybe a little bit faster.
So you have a weak joint.
Right, yeah. So you're able to get those muscles are strong, and so they may not get stretched past to the point where they would suffer an injury or something like that. So.
And how important is conditioning so that they don't become fatigued? Do more injuries happen when someone starts to tire?
We do see a risk of injury whenever athletes are fatigued. And so, again, it's important that they have that preseason time to get ready when their season starts. A sport like basketball, they will come in and they'll be doing stuff right when school starts. Even though they don't practice until October 15th is their first practice date, they need to be ready to go October 15th. They can't wait until that date and then start conditioning and then start working on being ready for their season. They have to be ready.
Downtime can decrease your stamina. You need to always stay conditioned.
Right. Yeah. And so the better conditioned you are, the stronger you are, the better conditioned you are, less likely of fatigue again, and then less likely for serious injury.
What are the most common injuries, say on the basketball court?
Well, one of the things that we see probably more often than anything else is a sprained ankle in basketball. A lot of times, people will step wrong or they'll land. There's a lot of people under the basket when players are trying to go up for a rebound. So it's not uncommon for them to come down on somebody's foot and they'll turn their ankle real fast. We also see, it's kind of funny, injuries kind of happen cyclically, it seems like. Where we see a lot of the same injury sort of in a row. Last year we had a couple of thumb and wrist injuries. This year we've had a couple of foot injuries. And so it seems like it's just kind of, there's a cycle of how things happen. But probably the most common overall is the ankle sprain.
How do you then assess the injury to know if they're okay to go back into the game? What goes into that assessment?
Well, it kind of varies, by sport and by athlete. I think when we're talking about basketball, we want to make sure that the athlete has good strength, that they can pass through sort of a functional test. If we can see them run and jog and jump, and they're able to do that pain-free or relatively pain-free, and there's no risk to further injury, then we can possibly tape their ankle and let them go back into the game, or
I was just going to ask that. I mean, how important, there's all kinds of strategies when it comes to taping. And sometimes athletes are even taped before a game, just kind of on their own because they know they might have a weak spot. Do you do that a lot with a lot of the athletes?
We do have athletes that'll get taped up before every practice and before every game. Sometimes they've had injuries in the past, and they've gotten used to having their ankles taped, or they've gotten used to that. It feels comfortable. They like that. They like the extra support. And then we have athletes that don't want to get taped before practice because they don't like the way it feels. And that's when the strength training is another vital part of importance, so that we can keep those muscles that surround those joints strong and keep them safe.
Excellent. So how do you know a player, like say they have a serious injury, do they have to go through any testing to know that they can be back to playing and back into the season?
Yeah, we have testing that we can put them through. A lot of times depending on the injury, there's different special tests that we can use to determine the severity of an injury, or if we need to refer that to our team orthopedic physician and maybe get an x-ray on it, or maybe advance and get an MRI, and look at possibly having surgeries or things like that. So there are some special tests that we can do. There's also just general manual muscle tests that we can do, functional tests that we can do, and that way we can know that we can put the athlete out there and they're going to be safe, and they're not going to be at greater risk for injury.
Playing so hard in a game, you usually end up being a little bit sore. What would you say is the most important kind of treatment, that can be used by athletes? I'm a fan of like a heating pad if you have a bad back, but so what would you say are some of the things that players might utilize? I mean, are they into whirlpools? Do they have, ice and heat? I mean, what works for them?
Yeah, so a big thing for athletes to understand, and that a lot of people don't see outside of the games, is all the stuff that they do as far as recovery.
Right.
Athletes will spend a lot of time after practice stretching and doing some recovery exercises, doing an active cool down. They might go in. We do have athletes that come in and get into a cold whirlpool every now and then. We have a lot of athletes that use different things like some Normatec boots.
So is it like a compression boot?
Well, it's like a compression boot, but it gets less compression as it moves up your leg.
I see.
It's variable compression. So the Normatec boots, we have some athletes that use those. Our men's basketball team has a set of those. We have a couple of the women's basketball players that use those. And then, I tell them all the time, one of the best things they can do is just lay on the floor and put their legs up against the wall, and they kind of let that blood flow come back down. They don't need any fancy equipment. It's just something that anybody can do, whether they're here at the school or they do it back at their house or their apartment or whatever. But there's a lot that goes into recovery for these athletes.
Yeah, and give us an idea of what game day is like. Is it, is there a busy prep for you and any other trainers?
Yeah, game days are always busy. We have a lot going on. We have things that we're doing to set up pregame for the team bench areas or the team locker room areas. And so we take care of all that. We have a handful of students that help us out, and then they do a great job for us getting that kind of stuff prepped and ready. We have athletes that'll come in. Again, they start most of our games on Thursdays or during the week are at 5:30, and that's our women's basketball start time. So they will come in 3:30 or 4 and start their routine, into whether that's stretching before they start their warm up, or they come in and do their ankle taping and things like that. Sometimes they'll come in and just get a hot pack on their back or their knee or something. They can ride the bike a little bit to get warmed up, and so that they feel ready once they get upstairs and start their actual warm up for the game.
Do you travel with the team too?
I do. I'll travel with them and be on the road with them. It's it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work also. You know, there's always making sure that they're ready if they need anything, making sure I bring things that they would need. Luckily, we're in a good position. We don't have a ton of injuries right now. Should probably. But even when we're on the road, you know, we're always doing stuff to try to make it as much like a home game as we can.
Right. Well, because I mean, for them, if you're traveling on a bus, you can maybe not get as much sleep or get uncomfortable, you know, and so is that a factor sometimes?
Yeah, we like to make sure that we get plenty of time after we get to our destination so that they can get off the bus, they can move around a little bit so they don't get stiff. On games that we do travel that day, we definitely make sure that we get there with enough time so they can get up and move around a little bit, and they're not just coming straight off the bus and trying to start getting ready for the game.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being our guest today and telling us about the life of an athletic trainer and how important your role is. We know it is for all the players. I'm sure they're grateful you're there.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
And thanks for watching Off the Clock.
Now when it comes to fear, you can either forget everything and run,
I said,
or you can face everything and rise.
I believe.
And let me tell you what I believe.
I believe that.
I believe we're gonna face everything
I believe
and
that we
rise.
will win.
It's time to knuckle up and fight hard. Now let's all buckle up and fight hard.
Say it with me. I believe. Say it with me. I believe that. Say it with me. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will say it. I believe that we will say it. I believe that we will say it. I believe that we will say it.
Bottom line, no matter what, face everything and rise.